Martin Scorsese is one of the greatest film directors of all time, but 50 years plus into his filmmaking career, does he still have it in him? This past weekend, I was able to go out and see the brand new Martin Scorsese film, Killers of the Flower Moon. This was one of my most anticipated movies of the year 2023, and I could not wait for this film to hit the big screen and finally be able to see it at the theaters. I first heard about this film back in late 2022 when all I saw was a picture still of the film of DiCaprio and Lily Gladstone sitting at a table, and it said, directed by Martin Scorsese. And that was enough to get me excited. Scorsese is one of the greatest directors of all time, and DiCaprio is my favorite actor of all time, so I was so amped for this movie. In fact, knowing just those little facts, it made into my top 10 most anticipated movies of 2023 video that I did in the beginning of this year. Now, going back to a couple days ago when I first saw this movie, all I knew about it then was those facts and that it starred Robert DeNiro. So I was very excited, but I didn't really want to look more into this film because I wanted to be as clear-headed as possible. I didn't want any, background information, any people giving me reviews if they liked it or not. I just wanted to go in knowing as little as possible so I could build my own opinion on this movie and really, be immersed in the story without having all this background knowledge. That being said, going into it, I think this is one of the best made films of the year. I think this and Oppenheimer are probably the two best made films of the year. That's not saying they are my favorite or that they are the most fun, but they are the two best made, and you can't really be surprised with that because you have Scorsese and Nolan, two of the best directors of all time. Getting into that, usually with my movie reviews, I try to be very free-flowing and just kind of go with the flow and say what's on my mind, say what I think, just talk to you guys like I'm talking to a friend. But I do feel that this movie deserves more than that because of how well made it really is. So I'm going to try and do a more structured review here where I talk about my positives, I talk about my negatives, I talk about the so-sos and what I'm iffy about for this film, and just really lay it out to you guys, a review for this film. So we're about 3 minutes in this video. I might as well start getting into it. So with the positives, the first big positive I have is the acting. There are so many great performances in this movie. You have DiCaprio, you have DeNiro, you have Lily Gladstone, you have Jesse Plemons, the guy from Breaking Bad. So many great performances. They all did a great job. You also have some other, background characters who do a really solid job in this movie. Not a lot of standouts, but they are really solid background characters. Nobody is a bad actor in this movie. I think Scorsese does a really good job of getting the best out of his actors in his films, and he always has the best actors. So getting the best out of the best, in my opinion, the greatest actor of all time is Leonardo DiCaprio, and his greatest performance is in The Wolf of Wall Street, and that is a Scorsese film, so my point just stands there. You also have Brendan Fraser in this film, who is maybe a not popular opinion, but I don't think he was anything special in this film. I wouldn't say he did bad at all, but his performance last year in The Whale was so heartbreaking and so good that I just feel like this is a little bit of a downslide for him in terms of performance, in terms of acting. But I'm a huge fan of Brendan Fraser, and I'm so happy for what has happened with his career, how he has this new resurgence in the past few years, so great for him. So yeah, the acting is a standout, and not to keep talking about him, he is my favorite actor, but being up with the likes of Lily Gladstone and Brendan Fraser and Jesse Plemons and Robert De Niro, especially Robert De Niro, and being able to stand out as the best actor in this film, DiCaprio is outstanding. He is exceptional in this role and in most roles he's in. A lot of great actors, you go to the movie and you go, oh, that is De Niro doing a great performance. That is Matt Damon doing a great performance. But when it comes to DiCaprio, you don't even think about it being him. He just becomes that character. Every time I see him in a film, he becomes that character. He's no longer Leonardo DiCaprio. He becomes Ernest, whatever the guy's name was in this movie, I believe it was Ernest, he becomes the Wolf of Wall Street. He becomes these characters, and it's so awesome to watch on screen. Another huge positive I'm going to have for this movie is the setting of it, the tone of the movie, all of that. This movie was filmed, I believe Scorsese said, all in Alabama or Oklahoma, one of those states. And it's truly a beautiful setting for this film. It brings you back to the 1910s, 1920s, whatever this film was supposed to be based off of. And it truly shows life in that time. I don't know if they created a set for this or they found an old town stuck in the past, but a great setting, and it really helped you, you know, be more connected to this film and dive deeper into it. The tone of this film was also great. You have this Indian Native American tribe, and you see how they are so, you know, connected to their roots. Early on in the film, it talks about how they are afraid of the white man coming in and taking their roots away from them, changing their lifestyles. They're still very connected to their roots. Hundred years later or so, in the 1910s, in the 1920s, when this movie's taking place. I think the back and forth between them and the white men of this film, led by DeNiro, he is like the president of this town, or whatever he labeled himself as, king of the town. And the dynamic between them back and forth is really cool to see, because when you first get in there, you see DeNiro as this hero character who built the town for them and did these great things for them, but then you start to think that maybe he isn't exactly what he seems to be on the outside. And the tone of this movie is great, because I know some people might not like it that the movie kind of spoils itself, and that you understand right away who the killers of the Flower Moon are, who the bad people in this movie are. There's not really a mystery you have to unravel, but I don't think you need a mystery, because the second you figure out who the bad people are, who the killers are in this movie, you start to, you know, realize it around the first third of this movie. In the second third, it's totally told to you. You really understand who it is. And then in the last third of this movie, you're just building towards this tension. And like I said, some people might not like that, but for me, you really get to see just how, like, brutal these people are, DeNiro and his family and his friends, and how they can put on this face of like the savior of these people and giving them a town and bring them into the 20th century, and then just backstab and destroy them and use them all for money. It's a devastating thing to watch. I would truly call this film devastating. Now, I get people's gripes with that, about the pace that it moved, about there's not really a mystery and you're not really working through much, and that you feel like, you know, oh, I know what's going to happen next, I see what's happening next. And yes, you do, but to me it works for this film because of how devastating of a character DeNiro is. Another positive I have to give is just the overall direction by Martin Scorsese to take a true story like this that is so devastating and has so many mean-hearted, ruthless people in it, and make you sympathize with not just the tribe's people, but also the bad people in this movie. I mean, you don't really sympathize with DeNiro to a level that you want him to succeed and you want him to, you know, get away with what he's doing, but you sympathize with DiCaprio as the nephew of DeNiro, and how he has to go through this, and how he ends up falling in love with his wife, but he still has to betray her and her family for DeNiro. It's very sad to watch, and you're able to sympathize with him, but you also don't want to see him win or see him succeed because of the nasty, terrible things he's done. I heard some people in my own theater complaining about how this movie never got going, or there's never that big action scene or that big set piece that made you, like, you know, that took you over the edge, that was like the thing you were waiting for. And my whole thought process on that is, while I love the MCU and I love movies like that, and the MCU is one of my favorite franchises out there, I really do think they're starting to hurt people when it comes to movie enjoyment, because people go into these films expecting these big spectacles, and when they don't get it, they think it's a bad film. But sometimes movies, you're supposed to just sit there and follow along with the story and think. Instead of sitting there and, emptying your mind and just looking up and seeing spectacle, you need to actually think and live in this moment and think, what is happening here? This is brutal. This is devastating. Why did this happen? How could this happen in real life? How can we make this not happen again? How can we learn from our past and fix that? And I think movies that make you, feel and think and really look down deep into your life and the world around you are more important than big action spectacles. If you get more fun out of Fast and Furious 10 than you do out of Killers of the Flower Moon, I honestly can't blame you, because yeah, you know what, it probably is a more fun film. But what film is better? What film truly makes you think and makes you feel? It's one like this. Getting into the negatives of this film, I truly only have one, and that is why you're going to see my score is not a perfect 10 out of 10. And that is the runtime. And it's not me complaining that it's a 3.5 hour runtime. I don't mind long movies. I will sit down and watch anything. It's the fact that about 2 hours into this film, and I never do this, I actually turned my phone back on to check the time. And I saw there was an hour and a half left in this film. And I thought to myself, how? This feels like it's ending. This feels like it's over. This movie's starting to lull, it's starting to bore for me. I don't get how there's an hour and a half left. Luckily, about 5 minutes after that, another scene kicked in that kind of kicked off the fire of this film again, and you got right back into the story. But that just tells me that this movie does not have to be 3.5 hours long. A movie shouldn't lull at all or make you wonder when it's going to end at all. It should have you captivated the whole time. So if they can go to around that 2 hour mark, hour and a half to 2.5 hour mark, and cut out maybe a half hour to 45 minutes of this film, or cut out certain things that kind of dragged on, I think this would have been a higher rating for me, a higher ranking of Scorsese for me, a higher ranking of this year's movies for me. I can't give a solid 10 out of 10 score to a movie that makes me feel like, what's happening? Where are we going with this? So that is my only negative, and I feel like it may be a big one, but overall, the direction's great, the story's great, the acting's great. It's really just one negative. And lastly, the things that I'm iffy about is, like, this kind of has to do with the length of this movie, but the pacing. When you first start, you get a little scared, like, is there even a story to this? Is it going to be one of those films that's more, visuals and ideas than actual substance, kind of like a Nolan film? I got scared at first, but then the story really starts to kick in, you start to follow it, and it is a good story, it is a captivating story. So yeah, just the pacing of the story. In the beginning they could have done something different. They could have paced it differently throughout. It didn't have to be that 3.5 hour runtime. That is really my only issue, is the pacing and the runtime. So overall, I am mostly positive on this film. I think it is one of the best stories of the year. Scorsese does a really good job of taking these real life stories. Usually he finds books of them or reads books of them and turns it into a movie. He does a great job of doing that. He knows exactly what works on the screen and what won't work on the screen. The acting is exceptional. I don't think it's one of the best performances from any of these guys, but it's a really great performance by DiCaprio and DeNiro and all of them. I think Lily Gladstone was a standout in this film. I don't think I've seen her in anything else, but she was truly a heartbreaking person to watch in this film. She gave a great performance. Like I said, the tone is great. It's so devastating. It pulls you in. It's probably not a movie you want to rewatch a bunch of times because of how devastating it really is, but I could rewatch this. I don't have a problem with it. It's something I would like to rewatch. It's definitely more rewatchable than some great movies this year, like Oppenheimer. I don't have any need to rewatch that one after, sit on that for a little bit. So in terms of my rating for this movie, you know, when it comes down to it, this may be the best made movie of the year. But when it comes to me, I need a little more from my movies. I need it to be paced perfectly. That is what gets me going for a movie. That is what increases rewatch value for me. I think I would have to go with a solid to low 8 out of 10 for this film. Like I said, probably the best made movie of the year, but not my personal favorite. I do like it more than Oppenheimer. I do like it more than a lot of movies I've seen this year. It's probably going to end up in my top 10 of the year. 8 out of 10 is not a bad score, but I don't know. I just feel like I saw the potential in this movie and it could have been a little bit better. As far as a movie I'd like to own in my collection, for sure. 8 out of 10 is a good score. I know I feel like I'm kind of talking myself in the hole with this film, but 8 out of 10 is a good score, and I would love to rewatch this. I love Scorsese, I love his catalog, and I love this movie, and I'm so down to rewatch it. As for seeing in the theater, it's not a spectacle, like I said. If you have a free day when you want to see in the theater, go ahead and do that, but you can perfectly watch this in the comfortability of your home. I probably would rather do that on a second rewatch because then I can pause it. Like I said, a 3.5 hour runtime is hard to get through just sitting there in one sitting. So, watch at home if you can. Watch in the theater if you can. It's all your personal preference. But I want to thank you all so much for sticking around and watching this video. If you watch all the way to the end, I have a special announcement. We are doing a race to 500 subscribers. That is my goal. And when I reach that goal, I want to do a giveaway. It won't be anything crazy, just a small giveaway, but it's a thank you to you guys for supporting my channel. So, come along for the ride. Once we hit 500, I'll have some kind of way to win this giveaway, and a couple of you lucky subscribers will get the win. So, thank you all so much. Please leave a like on this video. Comment below your thoughts on this movie. I want to hear everything that you guys have to say. And, as always, have a great day.